Welcome to downtown LA. This is honestly a part of downtown LA that not many people see. You guys are here to watch some poker, and I've got something special for y'all. Close to the Hustler, and we have a very special session in store for y'all today. So let's hope that the poker gods aren't snakes to us. Let's go make some money. Let's win. Hustler Casino Live. The comeback is real. Let's go.
To watch her play. And one of my buddies, good friend, Kieran, close to broke. Man, he looks a little different after this haircut. Looking sharp, man. Okay, I see it.
Anytime you sit under the bright lights of the Hustler Casino Live, your heart gets going. My heart rate is absolutely through the roof. And what a better way to settle the nerves than getting into a hand where you're already bluffing. In this first hand of the notes, we have quite a few limps. Action gets to me and I decide to isolate to $400 with Queen 10 offsuit. Not something I'd ever recommend doing, but with the stand-up game going, I'd rather be the aggressor in the hand if I'm going to play it than play, not great poker with a not great hand. We only get one caller here. We're heads up to a flop that comes out 8 high. Not a lot to work with, but with a couple of those backdoor cards that could help us, I decide to throw out a bet for $350. Our opponent, Mr. Dennis, decides to make the call. Their turn card doesn't really help much of anything. It comes with 4 spades. At this point, I kind of have 2 roads to go down. It's easy. We can just give up and move on to the next hand. Or 2, because we're on stream, we should probably fight for some pots and try to make things interesting. I go with the latter and bet 1.1k. Remember, these are real dollars, and yeah, this will hurt if I lose. Our opponent doesn't care how much of the real dollars we're putting out there, he makes the call. The river card now comes out the 6 of hearts. Once again, doesn't help me at all, and I decide to bet $1,700, looking to get my opponent to fold all those middling pairs, and of course, if for some reason he has an Ace X or King X club draw, we can get him to fold hands that are better than us as well, but unfortunately, our opponent doesn't decide to fold. He ends up going all in. We have to fold, and he shows his pocket sevens to win his button. Looks like we're still in this game. This next hand is another fun one. There are several limps, with the action getting over to Francisco. He makes it $240 as an isolation raise. I'm a couple places to his left, and we look down at the weapons of mass destruction. Pocket aces, the number 1. I decided 3-bet to 1,000. I feel like I can go a little bigger here, especially because I don't have my stand-up button yet. But when the action gets back to Francisco, he just decides to make the call. Everything's going to plan, but a little less so when the flops comes out King, Jack 8 with 2 clubs. We do have the Ace of clubs here, so I feel like checking back sometimes is a good idea. And especially considering that my opponent has shown the propensity in the past to, play super passive and trappy with his big hands. I've played with Francisco quite a bit, so I decided to use this knowledge to my advantage and check it back. The turn card's a Queen of Hearts, now turning a pretty bad board to kind of a really shitty one at this point, to be fair. All the hands that I think he's going to isolate with, like King Queen suited, Queen Jack suited, Ace 10 suited, are now beating me. So when he checks to me, my goal is to get to showdown and proceed with caution. I check it back and the river card comes out the 4 of diamonds. At this point, with $2,000 in the pot, Francisco decides to slightly bet more than that. He bets 2.3 thousand, and with the action on me, considering how he played the hand, it would be honestly insane if I could fold here. People might think that I'm actually Mike Postle or a god at the game, but I decided to do the obviously simplest thing here, and that's just to go ahead and make the call, just in case my opponent is betting a hand that I'm better than, like King 10, but that is all for naught. Mr. Francisco shows pocket jacks for the flop set. He was trying to trap me, but this time, Francisco, I wasn't falling for it. Just before this hand happens, I was luckily able to pick up my button, so I will not have to pay that stand-up game loser's tax, which is damn near $1,000. Early position makes it $140 to go. I'm in the small blind with Ace 6 offsuit. Really bad hand. Let's be really bad at poker and make the call here for whatever reason. Out of position to an early position limper. At least we're given action, right? The flop comes out Ace 7 4. If there was ever a flop we were going to be happy with, flopping top pairs, not a bad one. We do have some backdoor draws to go along with it, so I check it over to my opponent, and luckily for me, he checks it back. The turn card now comes the 9 of hearts. Once again, easy spot for me to now take over the reins of the hand. It'd be pretty, reasonable to check as well to continue playing in flow, but at this point, if I ever am going to bluff, I'd probably be bluffing, when I have a good hand, I should probably bet. I make it 300, my opponent calls fairly quickly. The river card comes out the jack of clubs. Doesn't bring in any of the front door flushes, which I obviously like. I make it 600 and my opponent snap calls. We show our hand and we do win. Our opponent was definitely getting a little curious with the queen high call on the turn and then making a second pair on the river. Obviously was not going to be folding. Luckily for us, we're able to finally win a hand here that matters. In a double board PLO bomb pot that was far too long and really not that interesting to go over, I'll give you guys a synopsis. We won about $8,000, which clears us out of our early hole, and that leads us to this next hand. We're early position, limps, sashimi makes a raise in isolation at that to 250, and I'm directly to her left. I look down at ace queen of hearts, and this is a really easy spot for us to find a 3-bet. I make it $800 to go. She makes a call, and the flop comes out ace 7-5 with 2 clubs and a spade. When our opponent checks to me, I think we can easily check this back and sometimes bet if we're willing to unload the clip. The problem with betting with a hand like this is I have no backdoor draws and not a lot of equity to work with, so I think just checking this back and showing down ace high is not going to win all that often or going to be really hard to get the showdown, but this is a good example of just waving the white flag when it just doesn't make sense to punt. But once again, I'm here to give action. I'm here to play, try to keep things interesting. I bet 600 and she raises to 2.2K. Easy spot for us to fold here. Just upset that I decided to c-bet, but I'm almost happy that I did. God forbid I had an ace or queen on the turn. We were drunk stone dead as she had pocket eights for top set. Ouch. Things are not working out so far. We are still playing the first stand-up game that you guys were watching, and no, we haven't played like 50 hands in the space of, 12 minutes. This has been one of the longest stand-up games, I think, in Hustler Live history. Things are just obviously not working out for the last 2 remaining players standing, and in this next spot, there's several limps. When the action gets to me on the button, and I look down at ace-queen offsuit, the opponent to my left, Miss Vixen from the YouTube channel, The Absolute Nuts, decides to go all in for $1,300, looking to win her button. Seems like things are going according to plan. When the action folds over to Ronnie, one of the 2 last remaining people that are still in the stand-up game, he decides to double cream back jam for 4.3K. Action now falls on me. I don't see his hand as being all that strong too often after he limps, so I just go ahead and make the call pretty quickly here. We're playing for a massive pot, all things considered, over 10,000 in the middle, with 4,000 being the main pot and 6,000 being the side pot. That's between me and Ronnie only. I'm taking my ace queen against Ronnie's pocket 7s and Vixen's pocket kings, and the flop comes out queen, jack, jack. We're now ahead of Ronnie for the side pot, which is what really matters to me. The turn card comes a 6 and the river card comes an 8. Doesn't change a whole lot of anything. We still end up winning the side pot. We end up profiting on the hand even though we lose a main pot, and we'll definitely take that as a win. Once again, we are battling against Miss Sashimi as she makes it $100 to go. I decide to 3-bet this to $500 after I look down at ace-king offsuit. Fast Eddie, a wonderful gentleman in the game, decides to make the call from the small blind, and so does Sashimi. We're going 3 ways to a flop where I couldn't have asked for a better one. We flopped a nut straight with a redraw to the straight flush draw, and even better than that, we have a royal flush draw. When the action checks to me, I feel like betting here is probably the best thing to do, even though it seems like I have this board completely locked up. Just in case Fast Eddie has a hand like pocket 10s, pocket jacks that just decide to call from the blinds, we're going to try to get him to stack off. I make it 600. He makes a call, Sashimi folds, and then the turn card is not my favorite one in the world as it comes out the 9 of spades. I actually don't look back at my hand and remember if I have the king of spades or the ace of spades. Either way, it doesn't really matter all that much. It's going to be really tough to get any more value here. So when he checks to me, I decide to just play this deceptively and check it back. When the river card comes a 4 of diamonds and my opponent doesn't bet, feels like we have the green light to go for some value. If we get check raise, I'd honestly be pretty bummed out. But in reality, feels like we have an easy bet for value. I make a $400 bet, and our opponent decides to shrug call. We show our hand, and luckily for us, we are good. Unfortunate, though, is that our opponent did flop a really, really big hand as he had 2 pair. But with this run out, I was obviously not going to get much more than what I got.
Reveal.
Can you answer the 5 of the king of spades?
And here are your winnings so far. Sashimi on a roll, up 12,000. Fast Eddie up 5K. Maybe slight over pairs. Oh, hello. That's a nice little bag, sir. How much was that bag?
Well executed, sir. Well executed.
Our session is going to continue moving forward. In this next hand, middle position makes it 150 to go. There are 4 callers, including me in the straddle, with queen 8 of hearts. The flop is not a bad one, as we flop ourselves a gutter ball here, as well as a backdoor flush draw. The initial raiser bets here for 300, which is probably pretty strong when he's betting into 3 other opponents, but we're on the Hustler Casino Live, and everyone decides to make the call. 4 ways to a turn card. Not often you say that after there is a bet, but it comes the Ace of Hearts, one of the best cards in the deck for me, as we now add some more equity. All of the action on the flop does not seem to be deterring our initial raiser opponent, Mr. Dennis, as he decides to bet for $800, throwing out the double barrel. But once again, a reminder to the folks at home, we're playing on Hustler Casino Live. We're all going 4 ways to a river. 4 ways to a river, what the hell? We have so much equity, but it doesn't come. It comes out the 6 of clubs. We check it over to the initial raiser who decides to bet 2,000, leaving himself a little bit of money behind. Mr. Fast Eddie decides to make the call. Sashimi folds and I fold. Without giving you guys, obviously, you guys can see the hands, but pretending like we couldn't, I wish I jammed the turn. Feels like the best option here is there's so much dead money in the middle. The scary thing is putting your money in the middle without a made hand, but in this case, we had so much equity and what felt like a pretty strong range. All that to be said, we lose the hand. Fast Eddie makes a great call, and Dennis was just blasting off into the ether. I get it, though. I've been there quite a few times. Our first stint with pocket aces obviously didn't pan out for us, but hopefully this time around it's a little better. Sashimi raises to 100. I'm next to act, and we have a slam dunk spot to 3-bet. I make it 500. Fast Eddie cold calls from the small blind, and so does Francisco from the straddle. Sashimi folds, and we're going 3 ways to a flop. That looks a little scary at first as it comes 9-7-6. Little scary, but it's a little unlikely for my opponents to be cold calling with 10-8s or 8-5. So outside of the obvious hands like 9-7 and 6s, seems like we have an easy spot to go ahead and bet big as we're looking to get all of those jacks and 10s type holdings to continue along. I make it 1.2k. Fast Eddie calls here from the small blind, and Francisco folds. The turn card now comes out the 7 of clubs. Once again, not so bad of a card. So when he checks it over to me, he does have, in fact, less than the size of the pot. My goal here is to put as much money in the middle as possible while I think I have the best hand. I go all in for 3.2k into a pot of about 4,000. Fast Eddie thinks about it for a brief moment before eventually throwing his hand in the muck, unfortunately. Does have 5-4 there, so flopped himself an open ender, just couldn't get the right price to continue along during the turn. This is by far one of my favorite hands of the entire session. Early position Miss Vixen raises to $220. There are several callers. When the action gets to me in the $80 straddle, I decide to make the call with 8-3 of hearts. Not a great hand, but a suited one, and I'm getting a great price. And then the flop gives us every exact reason why we play hands that are this ridiculous. 8-6 deuce with 2 hearts. We have what I like to call the car keys. I'm looking to get all my money in the middle with this hand. What a great spot to be in. Flopping top pair and a flush draw to boot. When the action checks the in-position player, that's a little surprising. Dennis bets 400. Action is now on Sashimi, and then she raises to 1.3k. This is kind of a disaster. I don't love it for many reasons. Most importantly, Sashimi's a fun player. She's shown the propensity to get a little out of line today. But what she's not going to be doing is blasting off in multi-way pots with absolutely no equity. So when she does something like this and raises the flop, earlier you guys saw that she raised me with a set. This time I'm kind of getting a hunch like something's up. With the amount of people to act still behind me, I'm a little worried that there's a chance that my hearts can be covered here, meaning somebody could have a better flush draw, which is never great, and another player can have me even more dominated with either a better pair or a set, and that would be having me in a really tough spot. All that to be said, I'm not one to really parade around a really good fold, but in this instance, it just felt like a fold was mandatory. I don't love it, maybe a little nitty, but like I said, with all of the information given to me with the bet and then the raise, feels like my hand's just not going to be good here all that often, so I just decide to pitch it in the muck. And I'm really happy to see that because Vixen on my left instantly goes all in for about 5,000. Dennis folds his overpair of 9s, which had us beat, and Sashimi overcalls now with the top set. Vixen has our flush draw covered as she has the ace-4 of hearts. They end up running this board out one time. That doesn't improve Vixen. It ends up giving Sashimi a boat. So, long story short, probably shouldn't be playing a hand like 8-3 in the first place. To be quite honest, this session has looked like most of these meme coin charts. A huge spike up, then a huge spike down, then a huge spike up. Just a lot of choppy water. I'm under the gun with King 10 offsuit. I make it $300 to go, and once again, we get too many callers to even keep count of. Going multi-way to a flop where I end up with top pair and a backdoor flush draw, I decide to just bet 500 as, you know, I got top pair. It can't be that bad. Fast Eddie decides to make the call, pretty fast actually, and the turn card comes, doesn't even matter what it comes, I decide to do something fun. I go all in blind for 2.2 thousand. Looking to give my boy Fast Eddie some action. Luckily for me, we have a top pair, which isn't that bad, albeit not a great kicker, and on a flush board here now, as the turn card comes at 3 of spades. Fast Eddie doesn't think about it too much longer and decides to make the call pretty quickly. We're going off to a river card, and it comes in 9 of spades. So we end up making a flush, and my oh my, did we need that. Fast Eddie shows King Queen, so he had us absolutely dominated on that flop. We were on the ropes, but luckily for us, we end up making the freaking flush, baby. That is exactly what we needed to get our session trending in the right direction. Today has been an absolute limp party. You would have thought that everyone in this game was missing a foot or something, but no, here is the king of the limps, the chicken master himself, the chicken wrangler, some say. Francisco comes in from the cutoff with a limp, and there are quite a few limps that now follow that. When the action's on me, though, I decide to isolate to 500, as I am going to be out of position for the entirety of this hand, and I'm looking to just take it down now. Francisco makes a call, and only him, and the flop comes out 9-5-3 with 2 hearts. We do have a fake flush draw here, meaning that I actually don't have 2 hearts and I don't have an actual flush draw, but I could pretend to have it as I do have 1 heart. Action ends up checking through on this flop though, as I feel like I'll probably be doing with a good amount of my range, and the turn card comes out the 10 of hearts. All right, looks like a spot for us to now bloat the size of the pot, why don't we? A jack gives us the nut straight, and a heart could obviously improve us to a flush. I make a bet for 400, and Francisco calls, giving us a pretty easy tell here of weakness by saying snap call immediately, and a couple of other things I'm noticing. The river card comes out the 5 of clubs. Now, I've got to just go for it if I think I can go for it, or give up if I think my opponent is strong. So I make it a bet of 2.5K, going well over the size of the pot, and looking to get those hands way out of the dodge, and looking to get those hands way out of the way. Francisco thinks about it for not much time before making the call with pocket deuces. I really like my bet on the river, but to be fair, I love his call. Great hand to you, Mr. Francisco, the wrangler of chickens. You won, and you just crushed my soul. Finally, in this following hand, I'll be playing a pretty meaningful pot against one of my really good friends in poker, the Recycler. You guys have seen him on the HCL, and you've definitely seen him in our vlogs in the past. I make a raise to 300 with pocket queens. We get 1 call here, and then the Recycler decides to 3-bet to 2.2K, leaving himself about 1.5K behind. Action back over to me. Easy spot for us to put the money in the middle. If Recycler's got it, by God, he definitely deserves the action. So I'm going to go all in here and let the cards fall wherever they fall. He decides to call it off here and asks to run it twice, which I'll always oblige to whatever my opponent asks to do. We run out 2 boards. The first one comes out Jack, Deuce, 5, 9, 8, and we hold against Ace, 10. Looking to fade an ace on the turn, or on the second run out, I should say, and unfortunately, there's an ace right there on the window. Good hand to you, sir. You definitely deserved at least a chop here. The Recycler was getting a little beat up in today's session, and I'm never happy to see one of my friends down, so hopefully we can see him run a little better on future streams. But for this hand, at least we're happy to chop it. Rounding out today's session, we have one more fun hand to go over. There's a raise to 100 from Sashimi. I decide to make the call to our left with Jack 9 suited, and so do a few other people. Then Mr. Fast Eddie decides to get really fast and 3-bet here from the button to a really small sizing of 400. Everyone that called initially makes the call, so once again, 4 ways to a flop here. That is an absolute magical one. We flop ourselves a nut straight. Action checks to the button, who bets 600. Sashimi makes a call, and this is a beautiful sight. We have a mandatory raise now. Can't allow my opponents to see a turn card for a cheap price. I make it 2,500 to go. We need to get our opponents to put the money in the middle right now when we have the best hand. And then Mr. Euro to our left goes deep into the tank. Several minutes go by, and to be fair, the Euro gentleman to my left had been tanking all day, and everyone's been pretty respectable about his time. But this time around, Sashimi has had enough. She calls a clock on our opponent, and I'm kind of happy she did, because if not, I would have had to do so, and that, isn't a great look, on the clock on somebody in a cash game. But we've had enough of the tanking here, but it looks like he has a real reason to tank, as he has a flush draw. All that to be said, he eventually decides to fold. The one hand that I could have probably got action from folds, and the rest of my opponents fold as well. A little unfortunate, but the saving grace for our session, as we were able to confirm a reasonably small but pretty decent little profit there to make sure that the staking investors made some money, some chatter. So again, if you guys are coming over from Stake Kings, thank you guys so much for investing. You guys were able to pull out a profit, and I'm happy to continue to sell small pieces on Stake Kings in the future to give you guys a chance at a fun sweat. All that to be said, there's still a lot more to talk about in the post-credit outro scene thing now, so let's pitch it over to me now and see how we're feeling after a ridiculous roller coaster and swingy session.
Okay, so last one in the game today. I think the graphics were slightly wrong. We were into the game for 17,000 and out to the game for 19,260. So small win. I guess we'll take it. Shout out to whoever bought on Stake Kings. But yeah, it was a really fun game nonetheless. Been rusty. I have not played poker often enough lately to really capitalize on my opportunities. But nonetheless, we'll take a win, because a win is a win. We were up, I think, at one point like 10K plus, and ended up making a really good bluff, I feel like, that just didn't pan out. And that's cool sometimes. So anyways, I'm going to rack up what is here. I appreciate you guys so much for watching these videos. If you guys didn't already, we're doing that Club GG game every single Wednesday, I believe, where I'll be running a game probably like 6 or 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So check us out over there. If not much more for me to talk about. I appreciate you guys more than you'll ever know. I'm gonna get the hell home because I'm tired. I love you guys all. Deuces.
Do this with my eyes closed.